following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hello, everyone. This is Rob Deininger with Comfortably Zoned Network, and I'm here with Jack Degraw, and we're talking Yankees baseball. How you doing, Jack?
Good. How are you tonight, Robert?
Not too bad. You know, bummed that the Yankees got another game postponed. They'll make up a doubleheader tomorrow.
A day-night doubleheader?
Yeah, I think the first game starts at 3 and the second one at 7 o'clock.
Boy, that's stretching it.
Yeah. I know Herman's starting the first game, but I think they're going to go with an opener for the game 2.
Oh, yeah. There was some talk of maybe later in the year they might move Herman to the bullpen because, you know, he's got an innings limit.
Yeah, he's 11-2 in the year so far. I mean, kid's been really impressive, but his innings are going to continue to rise as the season goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's up to 94 now, and the most he ever pitched was 124 innings, and that was like 5 years ago. So it's something to, you know, the Yankees are going to have to watch.
Yeah, and the way he's been pitching, he's going to be important for us down the stretch too. And if, you know, having him come out of the bullpen helps. I mean, great, you know.
And, you know, was there any news, Robert, about the injured players? Have you heard anything?
I know I heard that Severino, Betances, and Montgomery have all started throwing again.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
well,
and they hope to have Severino back before, you know, by the end of the season. And Montgomery, they said there's even a chance he might be back.
Well, I hope so, because they could use those guys. You know, we'll know more in a couple weeks. You know, when they actually get on the mound and they're ready to pitch some rehab games, because it seems like we've been going through this since late April.
Yeah, they start throwing, then they get shut down. They start throwing, they get shut down. So hopefully, you know, this time is you know, a positive. And not just one of those. Yankees are so secretive with their injuries.
Yeah, they never tell you what's going on. There was a report today that Stanton has made some progress, but he hasn't done any baseball activities, and they say Maven's coming along pretty good. But, you know, like I say, until they get in the games, you really don't know.
Yeah, and with Severino, I mean, if he does come back, do you even know what kind of pitcher you're going to be getting? With all the time he's had off. Yeah,
and you know the same thing with Montgomery. I mean, he missed last season, and usually when these guys come back from surgery, it takes a while for them to, you know, get back to their previous form. So, you know, it'd be nice to have those guys back, but you don't know what kind of, you know, pitchers they'll be right away.
Yeah, and that Debbie Garcia, he had his AAA debut Monday, and he did pretty well. He got the win. He pitched, 5 innings, gave up 3 runs, struck out 6, walked 1, and threw only 88 pitches.
Yeah, and another thing I heard was the Mets sent some of their big honchos down there to check him out.
Oh, no kidding.
So, oh yeah, they sent down you know, some of the big shots, you know, to watch him. So, you know, there might be a trade with the Mets coming. But, you know, it's all speculation at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to. I know the Yankees were linked to Zach Wheeler along with the Red Sox, you know, and I would love to get a pitcher like Zach Wheeler, but I can't see the Mets dealing with trading with the Yankees. I think the one thing they don't want to do is get embarrassed, you know, having one of their players, you know, have a good postseason. It wouldn't look good in the papers for them.
Yeah, the Mets seem to, everything the Mets do, they seem to get embarrassed. And I think Wheeler is on the disabled list now, and I think the Yankees might even want to go after Thor, but, you know, like, that's a stretch at this point.
Yeah, and Travis, the Tampa Bay Rays player, Travis d'Arnaud, who was with the Mets last year, and everyone just wanted him gone, and he literally beat the Yankees by himself one of those games. I think he hit, 3 home runs?
Yeah, he had the 3 homers, and then he had the big home run down here in Tampa to beat the Yankees a game. So, He's been a Yankee killer so far this season.
And the Yankees in Tampa, boy, they're really going at it. The last two series have been very entertaining. It could have, I mean, either team could have swept that last series, and this series is getting off to a great start.
Yeah, the last 6 games, I think, that's as good as baseball as you're going to see. And I mean, like you were saying, Robert, those teams really go after each other. When one team looks like they're out of the game, the other team makes a great comeback. So it makes for some great baseball.
Yeah, and the Yankees prior to last night, though, I was reading they were in their prior 6 games to last night were 4 for 44 with runners in scoring position and scored only 17 runs in those 6 games.
Well, that's what happens, when you get the power guys back.
Yeah, and Gary Sanchez, prior to hitting that double last night, was 4 for his last 46.
Well, that's what happens with the power guys. They'll hit some big home runs, but a lot of times with men on base, they won't come through. It's all or nothing.
Yeah, and Hicks, I'm glad to see. Like Judge is starting to. You could see he's coming around. He's doing really well, but Hicks is starting to show signs of life after coming back.
Yeah, I know he struggled most of the season, but it's nice to see him starting to get back in the mix. And as we were talking off air, Robert, the Yanks are 6 games ahead of the Rays. But if you look in the loss column, the Yankees have 8 less losses, and the Rays have played 4 more games. So, these games with the Rays are big for both teams, but I think they're especially big for the Rays.
Yeah. And, they got Boston. Boston's playing Toronto tonight, and Boston, I think, is 10 games behind the Yankees. And this could come down to the Yankees and Rays.
Yeah, I mean, there's some big games coming up, and, they got Boston coming up a couple times in the next 2 weeks. So, you remember when the Yankees went up to Boston last year in early August, they were like 4 or 5 games behind, and they had a terrible series, and that pretty much knocked them out of the race last year. And, the Red Sox looks like they're going to be in the same position.
Yeah. And I've talked to you about Clint Frazier, but Encarnacion, he's been doing great. I mean, he's hitting home runs left and right, and the Yankees just acquired a player today from the Kansas City Royals, and it's looking like there's not going to be any room in the outfield for Clint Frazier come the postseason. So, I mean, it's looking more and more like he might be traded.
Yeah, I think Tyler Wade might get traded too. The player, Robert, is Terrence Gore.
That's it, yeah.
He's an outfielder from Kansas City. He's like 14 for 71 this year, or 51. But previous years, he was like 1 for 16. He was on the Royals World Series team when they beat the Mets. And he's stolen like 40 bases in the major leagues. He's got thrown out 9 times. But in the minor leagues, he has a success rate of like 95% and like 340 steals. But he's not much of a hitter. He's just a speed guy,
Yeah, he's a guy they could use in the postseason as a pinch runner in case they have to manufacture a run. Having a guy like that who could score, from first on a ball hit to the gap is really important, especially in the postseason when you're going to face premium pitching.
Yeah, somebody like that can manufacture a run for you. They pinch run, they steal a base, and so that could be a big move come the postseason.
Yeah, and I'm still curious. I've been racking my brain. Who would the Yankees go after as far as a starting pitcher? I mean, there's really no one really out there. Then the 2 biggest names is Bumgarner and Scherzer, and I don't think the Yankees want to pay Scherzer all the money he's owed. And Bumgarner, you're just going to be renting him for the second half of the season.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think if you're the Yankees, you don't want to give up some of the your big name, your prime prospects, minor leaguers, just to keep him for a couple months. and the names have been, flying around, the guy from the Tigers, Toronto. I mean, they're good pitchers, but they're not somebody, I'd want to trade Frazier for, or, if they wanted somebody like Tyler Wade or maybe Estrada and a couple of younger arms deep in the system, you might consider it. But, well, we'll know more on August 1st. Right now, it's everything up in the air.
Yeah, and with this, we got, doubleheader tomorrow. Then we play 3 against Colorado, and then we got 3 at Minnesota and 4 at Boston. So we got a tough stretch coming up.
Yeah, the Twins have really turned it around this year, and like I mentioned last week, the A's got a good team. Texas has got a good team. The Indians are coming on. So the American League is a lot better than I thought it was. Back in April.
Yeah, and if Boston wants to catch ground, they actually play the Yankees 8 times and 12 games, starting July 25th. The Yankees play the 2 games with the Diamondbacks, and then they play 4 more against Boston. So Boston will have a chance to make up some ground in those 8 games.
Yeah, I think if you're, the Red Sox, you're probably looking. You got to win. You got to go at least 6-2 of those games.
Yeah.
If the Yankees at least split or they win the series, that could really set the Red Sox back. And it gets to a point where you might be running out of games.
And looking at the schedule here, August, outside of the starting off against Boston, we play Baltimore, Toronto, and then Baltimore again. And so the schedule is not as hard as it's going to be the next couple of weeks, which is
no.
Nice.
You just get through this stretch and you play decent baseball, and the schedule's on the Yankee side after August.
And I told you off the air that we had someone who wanted to hear us talk about the '78 Yankees, and it was actually. Was it 41 years ago today that the Yankees were 14 games behind the Boston Red Sox, and they came back to win the series with Bucky Dent's 3-run homer in that 1-game playoff.
Well, yeah, the interesting thing about that is, in '78 they were having a lot of trouble. You had George, and you had Billy, and you had a lot of egos, and I think Billy come out with something talking about Reggie and George. One's a liar and the other one's convicted. So Billy got fired.
Oh, he that's right, he did. And he was mid-season, right?
Well, he got fired sometime in July or late July. And the good thing is Bob Lemon took over, and Bob Lemon was like a Hall of Fame pitcher with the Indians. But Bob Lemon was like easy going. And he just, set the lineup. Reggie's going to bat fourth. He told the guys, you won the pennant 2 years ago. You won the World Series last year. So, I'm just going to let you play. And another good thing that there was a newspaper strike in New York. So, you didn't have the Daily News there, the New York Post, and, the Times and everything. So those guys could just concentrate and play baseball. You don't have all the questions about Billy and George going crazy. So, they really turned it around after that.
And Ron Guidry won the Cy Young award that year, right? I think he went 25-3, something like that. Some outrageous number.
Yeah, he was really phenomenal. They had a couple good pitchers. Ed Figueroa. Ed Figueroa won 20 games that year. And another thing, Catfish Hunter. He was 12-6. He started to have arm problems because the previous 2 seasons, well, 75 and 76. Catfish threw 650 innings in those 2 seasons.
Wow. That's unheard of today.
Yeah, and I mean, his first season, 75 with the Yankees, he had 30 complete games.
Wow. I just pulled up Ron Guidry's stats, and he was 25-3 with 248 strikeouts and a 1.74 ERA, and he had 9 shutouts, and he pitched just over 273 innings.
Yeah, I remember. He was incredible that year. But he had the big game in like mid-June against the Angels, and he had I think it was 17, 18 strikeouts, and that's when this thing started with 2 strikes. The fans start clapping.
That's when
it started.
How about that? Yeah, and I see Goose Gossage won Relief Man of the Year with 27 saves.
Yeah, what happened is they brought Goose in after 77. I mean, they had Sparky. Sparky won the Cy Young Award, and as Nettle said, he went from Cy Young to Sayonara. That's when Goose become the closer. But Sparky was still excellent. But Goose would come in and he'd just stare everybody down and then throw 100 miles an hour. So he was a terrific reliever. He was like, you talk about a power reliever, you think of Goose Gossage.
Yeah, and he pitched. He likes to brag about it. His saves were 3 innings long.
Yeah, back then they'd bring the guys in. They would bring them in the 7th inning. They wouldn't think nothing of it. It just changed. I can understand where Goose is coming from because he did throw 2 or 3 innings. But I mean, the thing that I think I didn't like, and what a lot of people didn't like, you can compliment, you can talk about yourself and the era then, but don't say anything bad about Mariano or the current relievers because Mo was just lights out. He was incredible. And Goose was fantastic too. But when it comes to closers, I think there was nobody like Mo Rivera.
No. I mean, when he came in, you knew the game was over. I mean, the most heartbreaking thing for me was that time, Game 7 against the Diamondbacks, where Luis Gonzalez hit that ball over the second baseman's head for the win. I mean, that broke my heart. But that was the only time I can really remember Mo getting burned in the postseason. Otherwise, he was the best postseason pitcher of all time.
Yeah, and before that, I remember Tony Womack had an incredible at bat, for the Diamondbacks. He battled Mariano, and then he hit the double, and then there was a force play at third base, and Brocious could have possibly threw to first to get a double play. But it's also painful to remember that. I'm not sure I want to remember that.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is when they bring up records for the World Series, Babe Ruth's name is actually among some of the all-time leaders as a pitcher.
Well, yeah, during 1912, 1913, 15, 1917, the Red Sox actually had a dynasty, and and Babe was just Babe Ruth was a great pitcher. I mean, it wasn't until later, he became this great slugger. But one year with the Red Sox, he had 29 homers. And that was the record. But when I think Babe was the greatest player ever. I mean, you just look at the stats, pitching and hitting, and there was nobody like Babe Ruth.
No, and I think he still has the record for the lowest ERA in the World Series, or at least he's right there at 1 or 2.
Yeah, he's up there in pretty much everything. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
I mean, he was hitting more home runs than most teams were. I mean, that must have been a great time to watch baseball. This guy Babe Ruth.
Yeah, because they needed somebody like that after the Black Sox scandal of 1919. People were starting to lose interest, and then Babe come along and hit all these home runs. I don't think it made the owners too happy, or the purist of the game, the traditionalist, but Babe Ruth changed everything, and
there's a story, and I don't know if it's true, but it's with Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth, and Ty Cobb despised Babe Ruth for hitting home runs because he didn't think that's how the game was played. And Babe Ruth just told him, "You're just jealous because you can't do it." And the Yankees played the Tigers in a doubleheader, and Cobb I think hit 5 home runs in the doubleheader, and said I could do him if I could hit him if I want to. I don't know if it's true. I haven't checked the records, but it's a story that I heard.
Well, I know there was a lot of resentment because like back then, teams would play for a run. A lot of times the hitters would choke up. And they'd choke up on the bat, and they'd punch and Judy the ball. They'd hit the ball the opposite way. They tried to hit, slow rollers and just knock it over the fielders' heads. And then Babe come along, and he just, would pound home runs.
And I tell you, I got a picture of the 27 Yankees, and Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. They were just 2 huge players. I mean, compared to everyone else on the team, they were humongous. Big old broad shoulders.
An interesting thing was, I think in 27, Lou Gehrig had 184 homers. I'm not homers. He had 184 RBIs, and Babe hit in front of him and hit 60 homers. So the thing is, who was Lou Gehrig knocking in?
Yeah. That was Murderer's Row. My God.
No, so you want to talk a little about the 78 Yankees?
Yeah, I was born 2 years before 78, so I'm not too familiar with it. So I'll let you speak on it.
Well, they had Munson, and that was like Thurman's last hurrah. Basically, was 78. Because in '79, that's when he had the plane crash and stuff, and his stats were starting to go down because he was getting beat up, from catching so much. But he had a great year, and then you had Chris Chambliss, who they got from the Indians a few years earlier. They had a lot of great hitters who were clutch. They had Chambliss, they had Randolph, they had Nettles, Sweet Lou Piniella, and Reggie had a lot of, big home runs. Every time there was a clutch situation, Reggie would be up. And then, Go ahead. Sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
Roy White was on the team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roy always comes through with, Roy was just so dependable. I mean, I remember going to games late in the season, and I remember seeing him, jump in the stands and rob somebody of a home run. And then you had another catalyst, was like Mickey Rivers. Mickey couldn't walk too good, but he could cover the outfield, and he made some terrific plays out there and stole bases. I think one year with the Yankees, he had 70 steals.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at the coaches and the managers. It was Billy Martin started the season, and then I guess Dick Hauser, and then Bob Lemon. And their coaches were Yogi Berra, Art Fowler as a pitching coach. Elston Howard was the first base coach. Dick Hauser was the third base coach, and they had Claude King and Gene Michael. That's a nice roster of coaches.
Well, one of the things, Art Fowler went with, when Billy managed anywhere, Art Fowler went with him. Art was Art Fowler was Billy's pitching coach, but he was mainly Billy's drinking partner. So, Billy needed somebody to drink with him, and Art Fowler was the guy. So that was I think Art Fowler's main duty with the Yankees was to drink with Billy.
Billy Martin, is that 70? Is that the year Billy Martin asked Reggie Jackson to bunt with Thurman Munson on base?
A lot of times, Robert, I get 77 and 78 mixed up, but I believe it was 78. They were playing the Red Sox, and he asked him to bunt, and he didn't want to bunt, and then he tried to bunt with 2 strikes on him, and it went foul. And then they suspended Reggie for 5 games.
Wow.
And I think Reggie come back, and they were playing in Chicago, and I think that's when Billy made a statement. One's a born liar, and the other one was convicted. Talking about Steinbrenner, and then they had an incident up in Boston when they said Reggie wasn't running after the ball, and Billy sent in Paul Blair, and then they had that incident in the dugout up in Boston, and also was the game of the week.
That's right. It was nationally televised, right?
Yeah, and Yogi stepped in, and thank God, Elston Howard stepped in, and not only that, they sort of like covered the TV cameras up, or it might have been an uglier incident than it was.
Yeah, and didn't they have Martin leave after the game because they were worried that Reggie Jackson was going to kill him in the locker room?
Well, I think they had a couple incidents about it. I mean, it was a crazy scene. Like I say, Rod, I think the best thing was, they got rid of Billy, and the newspapers were on strike, and then they had Bob Lemon, who said, "I never bring the game home with me. I just leave it on the bar on the way." So, he smoothed everything out. But then I think they had the crazy incident. I don't know if it was that year, but George fired Billy, and then on Old Timers Day, he was going to bring him back in a couple years.
Yeah. It was announced that he would be returning for the 1980 season, right?
Yeah, and it was, the insanity just never stopped. It was just crazy. And I remember that Joe DiMaggio was like, "What the hell's going on around here?"
Yeah, I remember that there was I forget where I read it, but Billy Steinbrenner was on a warpath looking for Billy Martin, and they were at the hotel, and Thurman had to keep Billy quiet in the bathroom while Lou Piniella calmed down George Steinbrenner out in the room. But, they're crazy times.
Yeah, they were having a meeting. I believe I think Piniella and Munson went to George and say, "Look, get Billy to bat Reggie fourth. Yeah. If it makes Reggie happy and it helps the team, have him bat fourth." And Billy had a few too many to drink, and Billy found out they were in George's room, and he went in there, and I guess they tried to prevent an ugly scene.
Yeah, and I remember ESPN did a series called The Bronx Zoo on the Yankees, and there was a scene where Billy Martin put the names in a hat and had Reggie Jackson pull the names out of the hat, and it turned out Reggie's name came up fourth to bat cleanup, and had a great game. Kind of proved Billy wrong.
Yeah, well, once they put Reggie in the fourth spot, everybody had their role, and they really just played fantastic down the stretch in '78, and they won 4 games up in Boston to tie the Red Sox in early September. And I mean, Robert, they just it was like 14-2, 16-1. It was ridiculous. And another interesting thing is the Red Sox actually fell behind by 3 games, like in mid-September, and they made a great comeback too. And on the last day of the season, Louis Tiant of the Red Sox beat Toronto. I think he shut him out. And the Yankees lost to Rick Waite and Cleveland. It was something like 9-2 or so. And then they had, that playoff game in Boston the next day, and Reggie hit a home run and Bucky Dent hit a home run. And George is the one who got Bucky Dent because Billy liked Fred Stanley. And George wanted an all-star at each position, and he got, Bucky, and Bucky hit that big home run. Bucky was a good player. He's very solid. He wasn't much of a hitter, but he was good enough. Very steady in the field.
Yeah, and in '78, Reggie Jackson and Greg Nettles led the team in home runs with 27. Greg Nettles actually batted .276 with 27 homers and 93 RBIs.
Yeah, Nettles was a heck of a player there with the Yankees and with any team. Nettles was really good. And, like I say, when he had to get up, he would shorten his swing, and, he could deliver the clutch hits too. But, I mean, in the series, he was incredible.
Yeah, he had 390 career home runs.
Yeah, I mean, he was with the Indians. I think he started with the Twins. He went to the Indians. He come to the Yankees, and then he went to the Padres. And the Padres got into the series too. So he's one of the top, 10, 15 third basemen of all time. Nettles is right up there.
Yeah, and Munson in '78 batted .297 with 6 homers and 71 RBIs, playing 154 games with over 600 at bats.
Yeah, well, they had, a tough road that year. The Red Sox were outstanding, and then they got into the playoffs against Kansas City, and they were always classic games. The Yankees and the Royals, because the Royals had a fantastic team, but the Yankees were able to win that series in 4 games, and Nettles had a big home run that series. Roy White, Reggie had a couple homers. Munson had a homer, so. Then they went to the series with the Dodgers, and that was a classic series.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ed Figueroa before. He went 20-9 with the 2.99 ERA. He had a great year.
Yeah, he come in the trade with. I think he come in the trade with who was it from Mickey Rivers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Figueroa had some trouble too with George. He was mad about his contract, and he said he was good. He was going to leave the team or something. So there was some drama too with George and Figueroa. But Figueroa there with the Yankees was a terrific pitcher.
And the Yankees, they won in '78, but the World Series, but they didn't make it to the World Series in '79, did they, or did they make it and lose?
No, 79. They only won. Well, they were 89 and 73, and they were going a little backwards in '79. A lot of the guys were hurt, and the Orioles had a terrific team, and then they turned around in 1980, and they won the division, and then they lost in the series to the Royals. In '81, they got in. And, that was a short season. And then, Reggie left the team, and then it just went south after 1981. Then George went like a little insane and tried to, he tried to, instead of the power Yankees, he tried to make them in a speed team in '82, and just, they had a losing season.
And Lou Piniella that year batted .314, and I didn't know Lou Piniella was a .291 career hitter.
Yeah, Lou was a terrific hitter. I mean, he could hit the ball to all fields, and he played left and right field. And Lou made a great play in the playoff game against the Red Sox in '78 because you couldn't see the ball out in right field, and somebody hit a single to right. And, Lou said he didn't even see the ball, but he stuck his mitt out. And if the ball got past him, it would have been a double, and the tying run would have scored. But, Lou had a knack of always making big plays. He didn't always look pretty out there in the field. He'd be stumbling after the ball, but, he'd catch him. So he was clutch.
Yeah, he 3-time World Series champ, American League Rookie of the Year in 1969, and he was 3-time Manager of the Year.
Yeah, he was a big fan favorite with the Yankees because he had a temper, too.
Yeah,
but he was great with the fans, but he had a big time temper. There was a story when he was with the Royals. He made the last out of the game, and just ran out of the stadium and ran home in his uniform.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's something.
Yeah, he was. But, I believe he's in the Hall of Fame, too, from his, managerial record. And he managed the Yankees, too, for a while, Pennell. And he was successful, but wasn't successful enough for George.
Yeah, he had, I think, over 1,800 wins as a manager. 1,835, I think, to be exact.
Yeah, he had a lot of success. And I believe he just released a book within the last year or so. So, I'll have to pick that up sometime.
And the author of the book was his name Jim. His name's slipping my tongue.
Jim Bouton?
Yeah, Jim Bouton. What was the name of the book he wrote?
Ball 4.
Ball 4. That's it. Did you ever read that? I never got a chance to read that book.
Yeah, I can tell you, a little bit about Jim Bouton. I remember. Well, the thing about Bouton in 62, 63, and 64, Robert, he won in 63, won 21 games. In 64, he won 18 games. And he won 2 games in the World Series. So he was a terrific pitcher the first couple years with the Yankees.
Yeah.
And I'll share a little story. There was a book that David Halberstam wrote about the 64 Yankees and the Cardinals. And Bouton, was never a big-time player in high school. He always had a struggle to make the team. But he had a good tournament when he was in, college or so. And he became a prospect then, and he got drafted by the Yankees. And he said, when I come to spring training, there was like 130 pitchers in training camp. He said, I might have been the worst one, but he says he just noticed that all these guys who had all this success in high school and college, when things didn't go right for them, they didn't know how to deal with it. And he said, I knew I had a chance to make it because nothing ever came easy to me. I always had a struggle. So when things went wrong for me, he said, I just worked to get better. So, that's something I remember about Jim Bouton. But getting back to the book, Robert, I remember reading it when I was maybe 15, 16 years old. And it was a funny book. And to me, it just exposed, the players are human beings. That's all it was. I mean, I know it pissed people off because he said Mickey hit a home run when he was drunk, Mickey Mantle. But in later years, Mickey was always talking about, he went on the field and he was drunk and stuff like that. So it was a controversial book when it came out. But I think Bouton was ahead of his time when he was like an assistant player rep with the Yankees. And he used to go to the veterans, you guys should be getting more money. The owners are screwing you. And they said, no, you're a communist. You don't know what you're talking about. And, when this book came out in the late 60s, this is when Curt Flood, not soon afterwards, started the thing against, baseball, they, and to this day, the owners, the owner's been screwing the players for years. And, it still continues to this day, and, we might have a strike in a couple of years, and who knows what's going to happen then.
Curt Flood, he took his case, I think, all the way to the Supreme Court. Am I right? Yeah,
he went all the way there. He lost the case, and Marvin Miller, who should be in the Hall of Fame, along with Curt Flood, just for what they did for baseball, but the owners are pissed off at him. He said, you'll probably lose your case, and you'll lose your career. But Flood said, I believe in this. I'm not anybody's slave. I'm going to fight for what I was right. And actually after that, that was pretty much the end of Curt Flood's year. Even though he did play a little bit in Washington, Ted Williams was the manager. Denny McLain was on the team. But after that, he was pretty much,
blackballed.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
pretty much.
Shame. I remember I read the Mantle biography, and I think I told you this once before, there's a story. Billy, Whitey Ford, and Mantle missed the team plane for drinking, and they had a game in Pittsburgh. So they took a train, and Whitey was able to sneak in through the bullpen, but both Billy and Mickey got in trouble, and the manager said you both are playing today because they were completely hungover. And Mantle's first at bat, he hits a home run, and when he comes back into the dugout, the manager told him, "All right, you could take the rest of the day off." And Billy was like teacher's pet. Yeah, it was one of the stories from the book.
Well, the story that Boughton told, Mickey was drunk and he couldn't play the next day. So I guess it got into later innings and they put Mickey in. They had to wake him up because he had a hangover. So he went up, and the first pitch, Mickey hit a homer. And Boughton went to him after the game. He goes, "How did you do that?" He said, "It was easy. I just hit the middle ball."
Oh, God. He must have been a great teammate. I mean, it's on his plaque in Monument Park, but he must have been something to play with.
Well, I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of these old teammates, and they raved about Mickey Mantle. He was the player's choice. DiMaggio they respected because he was a terrific player, but the players loved the Mick.
Yeah, and he said if he knew he would live as long as he did, he would have taken better care of his body. But I mean, his father died young, his grandfather died young, and he expected to die young too, right?
Yeah, they worked in the coal mines out there in Oklahoma, and you work in the coal mines, the life expectancy isn't too long just from all the cold, and they used to die from they would collapse the mine. So I don't think Mickey thought he was going to be around late 30s, 40 at the max.
Yeah, because I mean, my father would tell me how he'd be wrapped up like a mummy before a game, being all taped up. His body was so beat up.
Yeah, they said every game, and if you look at the late, you can see on YouTube like late in his career when Mickey hit his 500th homer in '67, and even when he batted in the All-Star game in '68, he could barely move. He could just barely get around the bases. That's why he wound up playing first base.
Yeah, I can still see that home run, his 500th home run, and it was almost like he's limping around the bases.
Yeah, I mean, another interesting thing, that the house wasn't, the park wasn't sold out that day. They maybe had 20,000 fans.
That's unreal.
So, they talk about baseball, how they're having trouble attendance-wise, but, back then, if you got 1.2 million fans a year, that was considered good. Now it's like considered, nothing.
Yeah, and that 500 home run, the pitcher came halfway to the catcher and said, "I'm going to throw it right down the middle." And Mickey said he couldn't believe what he was hearing. And sure enough, the pitcher threw it right down the plate for him, and Mickey hit it out. And the next batter, I guess, said, "I'd like it right here," and the pitcher threw one at him. Well, that was Denny McLain. Was it? Okay.
That was '68. That's the year the Tigers won they won the whole they won the series. They made a great comeback against the Cardinals. But Denny had already won his 30th game. He was 31-6 that year. And they were ahead of the Yankees 6-1 late in the game, and McLain he grooved the pitch for Mickey. And that was his 535th homer. And so that passed Jimmy Fox, and then Pepitone was up next. And Pepitone put like what he wanted, and McLain threw it at him and knocked Joe on his ass. But then the next night, the 21st of September, '68, Mantle hit a home run off Jim Lonborg, and that was Mickey's last home run of his career.
Wow.
The only reason I remember the date because I went to the game the next day, so that's how I remember the dates.
So, what are you expecting for the Yankees this coming up week? Expecting good things?
Well, yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to, it'll be nice to know. You get tired. At least I get tired of all the speculation. Who they going to trade for? Who they going to get and stuff. Yeah. So hopefully, within the next 2 weeks, we'll know who the pitchers are going to be.
Yeah.
And I'll be interested to see, I'd like to see Severino or Montgomery. I think Betances will be back. But, let's see him get on the mound. Then there's something to be excited about. But I think there's something brewing. I mean, we're going to see a pitcher or two. It'll be fun to see who it is.
Yeah, because with the addition of that speedster Gore today, and then you got Maben coming back, and Carcinone hitting as well as he is. I mean, there's no spot for Frazier unless they're planning on holding on to him for another year. But I think they're going to package Frazier and a couple of youngsters for a pitcher, and maybe a couple of relief pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll know more by, midnight August 1st, because if Frazier's still on the team, then they have plans for him for next year. And if he's not on, then we'll know what his plans are in the future. But right now, it looks like, he's going to be traded.
Yeah. And Herman tomorrow, he'll be going for his 12th win. I still can't get over he's 11-2 on the season. I thought he had really good stuff, but his stuff's been great this year.
Yeah, he's been incredible. He was telling a story. He worked with this pitcher, I think it was Daniel Cabrera, who pitched for the Orioles. He reached out to him because Cabrera was from his hometown, and Cabrera was giving him some advice. He said, don't do the things I do. Take care of yourself. And he told him a couple things, and Herman gave him a lot of credit.
Yeah.
Because Cabrera never became the pitcher that he could have been. And I think before the year, I mean, the Yankees would have been happy, if Herman, won 6-8 games, and now he's doing incredible.
Yeah, and it would be nice if Severino could return, because then, I mean, you could move Herman to the bullpen to help keep those innings down.
Yeah, I mean, every week you hear something new about Severino. I mean, this has been going on, since March. So hopefully, I think if it doesn't happen within the next week or two, they're just going to shut him down, and we'll see him in February.
Yeah, and Boone was quoted as saying, we could see Montgomery in the regular season, before the regular season ends. Yeah,
well, I think they have to be on the roster before September 1st.
Yeah.
Or else, they can't be on the playoff, roster.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting. That's what keeps it, keeps it exciting. The great team they have, and the pennant race, and who's going to be with them in X amount of weeks, and are these pitchers coming back? So there's a lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to take at least one game tomorrow, if not both of them. And then against Colorado, we got Happ, Tanaka, and Paxton going. Yeah,
I think at least if you get a split, you're happy, and if you sweep, then you're putting the Rays are in a bad way then, because then they're 8 games back, 10 in the loss column, and that's going to be hard to make up with 65 or so games left.
And I remember we were talking a couple weeks ago, and I said it'd be nice to get Gardner and Hicks going, and in the last 7 games, both Gardner and Hicks have been doing pretty well.
Yeah, Gardner's picked it up, Hicks has picked it up, so good. I mean, I think everybody likes Gardner because he's a battler, and Hicks has got a lot of talent, and hopefully he can take advantage of all that talent and become an outstanding player, which he could be.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when we talk next week, Jack, the Yankees have increased their lead in the American League East.
Yeah, hopefully, and we're going to find out who these pitchers are, and who these traded, who's going to get traded, and what the roster is going to be on August 1st.
Yeah, and the name I keep hearing is Stroman. But we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he's pitching well this year, but I mean, I don't think you want to give up a Frazier for him.
No, not at all.
I think, maybe a Tyler Wade, an Estrada, and maybe a pitcher from the lower minors, which the Yankees have an excess of talent in the lower minors pitching. But I wouldn't give up a Frazier for him or Garcia or something. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I do like that pitcher Bauer from Cleveland, but unless the Indians start falling, I don't see them trading him.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, they've been playing a good ball lately, and they've been cutting into the lead a little of the Twins, and they're in the wild card race. So
yeah, and the Mets, I've heard Wheeler and Syndergaard, but I mean, if they were smart, they would try to trade Degraw to get assets back. I think they got to start thinking about the future. Yeah.
This talent they got on pitching wise, it really hasn't panned out for them, and they got a bad situation there with the Mets, and nothing has went right, and hopefully for the great fans in New York, they can turn it around because they deserve it.
Yeah, because Syndergaard's ERA is extremely high for him. Wheeler is like on the IL now with what they're calling shoulder fatigue or something like that. And Steven Matz they put in the bullpen. Their pitching just hasn't gone the way they thought. Yeah,
I mean, if you're the Yankees, you want to give up, a lot of big name talent for these guys? I mean, you don't know. Maybe Happ and Paxton and all Tanaka. They could come up big. I mean, they could pitch well in the playoffs. So you don't know. And it all gets down to who plays well that night.
Yeah, and I love Tanaka in a big game. He always seems to come through in a big game. And Herman, I think Herman could be good in the postseason as well. And if by some miracle we have Severino, I mean we could be okay in the postseason with the pitchers we have now.
Yeah, you just don't know. But we keep saying, and the Yankees keep saying, you're going to see a couple pitchers come along that just. It'd be nice to know who it is.
Yeah. All right, Jack. This is fun. Next week?
Yep. Looking forward to next week, and hopefully by next week we'll have some answers.
That's true. All right, Jack. It was good talking to you.
It's always a pleasure, Robert. You have a nice week, and the people out there have a nice week too.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.